it well. Played it very, very, very well indeed.
No more slices for you.
Oh, look at that for judgment.
You'll learn.
Hello, everyone. Happy Advent. I don't know if, Sam, you're an Advent calendar person. I've got a very, very modest one myself, but I'm hoping that my son doesn't like his because he's got a really good one. Anyway, how are you? Happy December. Have you got an Advent calendar?
I don't have an Advent calendar. I don't think I've had an Advent calendar since I was a child, Ben. But
oh my God, this is remarkable. My stepmom still buys me an Advent calendar. It's like the £1 one. The chocolate's questionable. It might be like chocolate flavored something, but I do get one. So I feel sad now. I'm going to buy you one next year.
Well, you know, through my entire childhood, I never had a chocolate Advent calendar. I just had the really boring ones where you open it, it's like a picture of a cradle, and it's.
They do things differently in the South. This is the saddest opening to an episode of Sliced ever. We've not even talked about more losing golfers yet. I'm devastated for you. Anyway, do you want to hear about the pigeon?
Yeah, so let's hear about the pigeon, Ben. An Advent pigeon. That's it.
Well, anyone who doesn't follow me on Twitter, well done. My weekend was supposed to be bliss. It was supposed to be the family go away. I love my family dearly, obviously, but occasionally you just need a recharge. And they were supposed to be going to my wife's parents, who are about an hour from here. And I was going to, watch loads of golf, celebrate when Minwoo Lee won by 5 shots, go back to bed after that, and all that sort of stuff. And my son was violently ill on Friday night, so they couldn't go. So not only did I have to throw that into the weekend working and everything else, not only was I robbed of my takeaway and all those things that I got lined up, then at I can't remember exactly when it was, Saturday afternoon, there was a massive thud on the window and a pigeon had flown into the window of our loungy bit, and it looked fine. The pigeon looked fine. He was on his feet. He was sort of blinking in that way you might, if like a cartoonish blink that he just banged his head on a rock or something. And so I left him to it. And then about an hour later, my wife got home and went in the garden. She's like, "This is a decapitated pigeon on the lawn. What on earth has happened?" So we're blaming a local cat. But anyway, I then had to go out and remove the carcass of the pigeon from the lawn and the guts of the pigeon from the patio area where there was genuine blood. It was brutal. I'm sorry for anyone who's squeamish or loves pigeons. If you are listening, I'm sorry about that. But that's what happened to me this weekend. How bad is that?
There's always drama in the Coley household. It's
remarkable, isn't it? I think I said to you about a month ago, how is this my life? And it's got worse. Yeah, pigeons
Incredible.
and bins. What did you have any bird-related dramas, or you plain sailing?
Unfortunately, it was a relatively quiet weekend on the pigeon front. Highlight of this weekend, my daughter was in a street dance competition, and she did pretty well. She got a runner-up finish for her crew. And,
great! She must love Karen Carney or whatever. Is it Karen Carney? Is Karen Carney on Strictly Come Dancing? She's doing some street dancing on Saturday night.
Oh, yeah. We don't really watch that, to be honest.
I think more of you now, Sam.
Yeah, we have in the past, but that time is gone. Everything's gone.
Like the Advent calendar days, the joy is gone from your household. You even got a Grinch on your jumper. I think. Is that a Grinch?
I don't know. It's something like that. Yeah.
Am I discovering here you hate Christmas?
No, I love Christmas. I love Christmas.
Good.
I genuinely do. I like Christmas. I'm happy it's December.
Good. And you know when Christmas is coming, don't you, Sam? When the Nedbank comes.
The Nedbank, indeed. Well, and several Australian events and the Mauritius Open,
Of course.
There used to be an event on the Asian tour that was like on Christmas Day. I forget what it was called, but I remember Miguel Tabuena winning on Christmas Day itself, I think, or maybe Boxing Day. But
not got to worry about that anymore, has it? Oh no, he didn't quite make it to live, did he?
He didn't.
He's still going to have to work on Christmas Day. Drat.
I was going to say the other highlight of my weekend, Ben, was so my son had his first ever electric guitar exam. So it's called debut grade. So it's one before grade 1. And I'm naturally hoping that this is going to be the gateway into doing golf songs, about, I don't know, Miles Russell or whoever the big thing is in 10 years' time. So It probably won't be, but this is what I'm
Great.
hoping.
What a proud moment. I take it, did he pass this exam, Sam?
I'm still waiting for the results.
Oh, wow.
Actually.
It's like that. It's not like
No.
like your French oral exam where it's like, yeah, you can speak a bit of French, on you go. He's got a nervous wait. Oh, wow. Well, good luck to him. Good luck.
Thank you. Right, enough waffle. Let's talk about last week's event, shall we, Ben?
Yes.
And let's begin with the Australian PGA Championship, which David Puig won. And yeah, it sounds like you watched a little bit more of this than I did, because I didn't watch any due to the time of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I watched quite a bit actually, and I got up on Sunday morning. I'm determined to try and ignore it, but my brain, it just doesn't really let me. I got into a nice zone between having first and second child where I could record it, like the Sony Open when Cam Smith won, back when I tipped winners. I recorded it. I got up at like 7 and I watched it on fast forward, and it's actually a great way to watch golf, like just skipping between shots. So
Okay,
if you can either take a sleeping pill, or you are sufficiently mature and or tired enough to do that, it's a great way to do it. But I woke up at it must have been 3 a.m. I think on Sunday morning, and I had recorded it, and I was like, no, just go back to sleep. And after about 10 minutes of tossing and turning, I thought, I want to know what the situation is. There's no getting away from it. So I refreshed the leaderboard. My heart sank because Puig was 3 clear of Leishman, who I had, and 4 clear of Minwoo Lee. And again, I should have rolled over and gone back to bed, but I thought, well, they're just making the turn. I'll watch for half an hour. So I watched, and I was waiting for it to either get for a swing either way. If it had gone to a 1-shot gap, I was going to stay with it. If it had gone to back to a 3-shot gap, I was turning it off. And Puig hit it to 3 feet on the 13th, and at that precise moment, Mark Leishman was chipping out sideways on 14, and then in the next group along, Minwoo Lee bogeyed the same hole, and I think it was 5. So that was it. I did get some more sleep.
Right, it's never just half an hour, is it? Let's be honest. We can kid
It's
ourselves.
so slow, golf. I don't know if you've noticed this, but it takes bloody ages to get
That's
anything
like one
done.
hole.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, so one more hole, and then do you know all those little bugbears of golf broadcasts? They are like a million times worse at 3 a.m. You know, when they cut to the adverts, then Minwoo Lee had about 8 feet for birdie on like the 9th, and they didn't show it. Like, I was fuming because it was 3 a.m. and I knew that I was wasting my life. But I know what we're supposed to be talking about is not my experience of this golf, but what happened. And Puig was really impressive. He did hold a really long birdie putt, I think, at the 3rd hole. It was either the 3rd or at the 6th, one of the early par 3s, and it gave him a cushion. And really, he didn't miss a shot that I watched. He sort of had a couple of 4 feet par saves to make, but they never looked like missing. He got himself in a difficult spot on the drivable par 4, the 12, and you're thinking, oh, if he gets his bunker shot wrong, but he didn't. He made a good par, and he just played really sensibly, solidly, and once again, I was sort of in awe of his driving. So yeah, he looks like a player with a really, really bright future.
Did it sort of pan out that we talked about short game being an important attribute? Did that pan out as it was supposed to? Or, I mean, I know that the course was probably softer than it was maybe supposed to be because there was a lot of rain, wasn't there? And it probably played into the hands of someone like Puig, who obviously hits it a long way. But was there still that the premium on short game?
An element of that, I would say. You're absolutely right. It was a lot softer than we'd have hoped for, similar to last year when Elvis won. There was a moment on that 12th hole where Ricardo Gouveia had a chip from a tight lie, actually, and he flubbed it, but his club didn't bounce off the turf in the way that it usually would, and he just sort of stuck it behind it, and made a real mess of it. So I would say it was nowhere near what we'll have this week, hopefully, at Royal Melbourne. But there was still some like pragmatism involved. Puig was really good from what I saw. Sort of playing away from pins occasionally and things like that. But I do think, hopefully I've just said enough about how positive an impression he left. But I do think the conditions at the weekend in particular played into his hands. Definitely.
Yeah. And I looked at his scorecard, even if I didn't watch much of it, and I noticed that he only had 2 bogeys the whole week, and they came in successive holes on Friday, I think it was. So he obviously did a very good job of, keeping out of trouble and minimizing any mistakes, which is going to be important in that type of test. But yeah, I mean, word for him. I mean, I said this on Twitter, but looking at, we've talked a lot about Danish golf and how strong the youth is, but Spanish golf can't be far behind. No, Iora, Ballester, Puig, just name three. Chikara is another one. These are young players who've got a lot of potential, and they could all be future Ryder Cuppers potentially, but certainly Puig and Iora are probably leading the pack, I'd say.
Yeah, I would say so. I think Ballester's got that sort of freakishly long quality that it might, I don't know, my impression is he might just be the most volatile of the three. Still think Iora, long term, I don't know, I'll stick to my guns on that and say that if I had to pick one, it might still be him, but I know Puig is undeniably ahead of him in the curve. I think he might be a year or two older. He's been pro for a couple of years longer. Ballester and Puig were teammates, and not just teammates, but playing partners when Spain won the European Amateur in 2002, just before he turned pro. And look, he's a...
2022.
22. I do that all the time, don't I? I do that all the time. Yeah, and we have to say, look, I just to reiterate my stance on live golf, I hate it, but there were legitimate questions to be asked about the sort of pathways it would provide, the sort of risk a young player is taking when they sign up straight away. I still have in the back of my mind that concern that Sonic Faldo has vocalized, and others as well, that if you're not fighting for checks, you're not fighting for making cuts, it might not harden you in the way that he was hardened and that, say, a Justin Rose was hardened. I still think that is a legitimate question, which won't be answered for a long time. But I will say David Puig joined them straight out of college, in effect. They took a chance on him. He took a chance with Liv, really. And you look at where he is in the game sort of 3 years later, 2.5, 3 years later, it's hard to say it hasn't paid off, right? He's very, very wealthy. He's won 3 tournaments now as a professional. Now, as with Tom McKibben, we really find out in the long run, we find out if he's clearly good enough to play in the next Ryder Cup if he carries on this trajectory. Will it stop him doing that? We're going to find out. Obviously, he'd already decided to join the DP World Tour. That in itself a statement of intent. But for now, on what we know today, he's probably the best advert for the sort of complete nobody joining Liv, a straight out of college player, whereas in Kjetterup and a couple of others, we've had the opposite.
Yeah, fair comments. Right, take us on to the other events of last week. So, Ladies European Tour was the Andalusia Costa del Sol Open de España. Nastasia Nadal won that one. No major comments on that. I did a little preview, which was not very successful, but yeah, Nadal wasn't far away from my selections, but I'm obviously going to say that. Asian Tour, it was the Bharat Classic in India, and Pusit Supupramai won. That's his first win on the Asian Tour. Another, promising Thai players. A lot of good Thai players on the Asian Tour. And Sunshine Tour, it was the Fitch and Leeds PGA Championship, and another player who's been playing on the DP World Tour, in Dion Hermes won. And I had a look at his season. He had a really bad season on DP World Tour. At one point, he missed 12 cuts in a row. And it just sort of shows the level, and this is not disparaging, I'm trying to disparage the Sunshine Tour here, but it shows the level where someone like a Hermes Hayes can go back, play on the Sunshine Tour on one of their stronger events, I would say, outside of the co-sanctioned ones, and win. Because you got people like Casey Jarvis who wasn't too far back, and Baron Botha as well. But yeah, it's a good win for Hermes Hayes.
Yeah, he's still very young, so hopefully onwards and upwards for him. He's sort of 23, 24, I think. And he's a really solid operator. I'm sure there's more to come from him. Just a word for Joe Long there as well. He was sort of in the mix in second place for quite a lot of the weekend, actually. And, he's a Walker Cupper from, 5-6 years ago now, and is still trying to find a path. But he started playing some good golf in South Africa. He's had to spend a lot of his early years in South Africa. So he's one we'll keep an eye on, I guess. But it's a long road to where he wants to be. And probably he's a long way from where he expected to be. But yeah, further evidence of the depth of this game.
But interesting that he chose, as you know, the background of Joe Long, which I don't, Ben, but interesting that he chose the Sunshine Tour as a place. You don't see many British golfers going over to play on the Sunshine Tour?
No, there have been a few down the years, but not many. No, I don't know the truth of it.
McGuigan is the most.
Yeah, Doug McGuigan. There was always
Yeah.
Toby Tree played quite a bit down there.
Oh yeah,
And I was hoping Francesco Laporta got into the Nedbank this week because I was reading some quotes from him last year when he played really well, and he said, "Oh, we used to come here all the time as kids," and it made me think more about him because Laporta's played a lot in South Africa, so I think there might be a family connection with him, all of which is useless to you, Sam, because he's not in the field. But next, he'll probably be in the field next week. So yeah, maybe want to keep an eye on.
Okay. Japanese Tour, it was the Casio World Open, and Ryoichi Oiwa won. That's I believe his first win on the Japanese Tour. And the MENA Tour, which I love talking about, Ben. It was the PGA Orera Challenge, and Ludovico Adebo was the victor. And in runner-up place was Pedro Figueiredo, who I mentioned last week. And a couple of things there. I mean, obviously he was the local player, being in Portugal. He's someone who's played quite a lot on the DP World Tour, so in a way, kind of one of the class players in the field. And I read that he hit driver off the deck solely the whole week. He wasn't using tee pegs at all, which I love. I know that you think that shouts demons, but
well, when you say the name Pedro Figueiredo, I think he could be something, but he can't drive the ball. And I think I'm beginning to understand what's going on there now. But it can be really cool, like you say. I remember Ben Ann's shot from last year. That driver off the deck was insane, wasn't it? When he won the Genesis, but also Oliver Wilson, when he won in Denmark, and he sort of did his little tee thing on the 18th and hit a sort of squeeze cut down the middle of the fairway the week after I tipped him at 251, whatever. But you hear about the cool ones, don't you? And obviously Pedro's finished second. It's like, how many? If you got the names of all the people who are playing tour level golf right now without tee pegs, you got a lot of guys who are struggling on that list. So we wish Pedro well. It's a good start to the MENA Tour season.
But also, it always brings me back to the thing. I don't know whether it was Nick Faldo who said this on our podcast, or whether he or someone else mentioned this. But they said, if you're talking about equipment and that being a problem in the game, or ways that you could bring shot making back into golf, right? Some people have definitely mentioned basically getting rid of tee pegs, or maybe having a height limit. But, if you got rid of them, suddenly Pedro Figueiredo, he's going to be top 10 in the world, Ben.
Undoubtedly. And you're right, Sam. It was Sir Nick Faldo, Knight of the Realm, who said that very thing on a previous episode of Sliced. So you can go back and listen to that now via all good podcast providers. Like and subscribe. You'll never miss another bonus interview. And of course, if you didn't notice, there was one of those last Thursday when we spoke to the not Knight of the Realm, but nevertheless very nice, Jordan Smith. So go and listen to that now. Well, not now. Not now. Go and listen to it in about 40 minutes.
Good ad. Well done, man.
Thank you.
Last event to speak of, which we'll speak of very briefly because I have limited interest in it, was the skins game. I didn't even realize it was happening until after the event, I've got to be honest, Ben. But Keegan Bradley won. He won 11 skins. 9 of them came on 2 holes, and he won $2.1 million, which is lovely, isn't it?
I think that's for charity. I was ready here to go off on one about how ludicrous it is to give Keegan Bradley $2 million for having a doss around with Tommy Fleetwood, Shane Lowry, and Xander Schauffele. But I think it was to give to charity. Therefore,
good.
We can save our scathing criticism of a otherwise pointless event.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I genuinely would be quite intrigued to see what the viewing figures are. I mean, sometimes I get bored of looking at viewing figure information in golf because it feels like people are, use that a lot to kind of prove stuff. But I would be intrigued to see this because for me, it seems like something that I can't imagine would hold that much interest. But then I suppose back in the day, I think it was quite a big thing in the US. And it's obviously been away for however long, 20 years or so. So maybe there is still an appetite for something like that. But suffice to say, I don't have that appetite.
Clearly, you hate Christmas and you hate skins games. It's interesting, isn't it? Because there's clearly that nostalgic element, and I have that for certain things, definitely. But at the same time, like, the world has changed so much, hasn't it? And I just think maybe the skins game was really popular in the 80s, but maybe at the time there were like 10 things on TV. and it wasn't trying to get people to watch that instead of the excellent Netflix drama starring Claire Danes, which I would recommend, and so on and so forth, right? There's just so much choice now. For golf to earn a share of people's precious time might need more than a rehashing of a skins game that worked in a different time. But I don't mind people trying, as long as it did go to charity. Just to be very clear on that.
As long as it did, yeah. Well, I'll check that. But I'm glad you said that because I didn't realise that. Right, I'll take us on to our in the news section, which probably isn't as long as last week's one. The first thing, Fuzzy Zoeller has died, which it's always sad when a sort of a legendary golfer dies, 2-time major winner. But in some ways, I'm glad that it happened before he saw someone break the thing that I think he was most famous for, which is being the only debutant to win the Masters. And
yes, that he is always the answer to that question, isn't he? And I always remember, I know the year he won the Masters because of that, and I wouldn't otherwise know it. I don't know much about Fuzzy Zoeller otherwise. There have been all sorts of things written over the last week that you can, if you're interested in knowing more about his life and his career, then a lot of people paying tribute and saying he was a real character on the golf course. But I genuinely knew nothing about him. I know, like anyone, there's some good and bad stuff you can read about. So I'd urge you to do so. But yes, certainly a name that we'll hear every year until someone else does it. Maybe that will happen this year. Maybe it will happen this year. Maybe that would be fitting, wouldn't it? Who's most likely to do it?
Oh, that's a good question. Who is most likely? Well, I need to have a think about who are the debutants for next year's event, and off the top of my head, I'm struggling to think.
Marco Penge, that'd be about the only one I can think of at the moment. I mean, I can't think of many obvious debutants. There will be who's won on the PGA Tour recently, who would have earned not that recently.
Was Griffin in the field this year?
Probably not actually. No, he probably wasn't.
So maybe could be Ben Griffin, maybe. Yeah,
because they won the Zurich Classic after the Masters. I don't think he made the top 50 before then. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right, Ben Griffin for the 2026 Masters. You heard it here first.
Very good. It's not quite as cool a name to remember for the next 40 years. Like the last debut winner of the Masters was Ben Griffin in 2026. And did you know he briefly gave up his career to work in real estate?
Benny Booms Griffin. If he started calling himself that, then people would remember.
They would.
Right. Right. The other main thing to talk about in the news, Brian Rolapp appeared. So this is obviously the PGA, the new PGA CEO. He appeared on the CNBC CEO Council Forum to talk about various things to do with the PGA Tour. And obviously Harris English had made some comments in the last week or so, kind of leaking some possible how the schedule might look in the future. And he's responded to those comments. He said, nothing's been decided. I think Harris's comments have been getting a lot of attention. He said, if you dig deeper into what he said, it's not that complicated. It's competing with football, that's American football, in this country for media dollars and attention is a really hard thing to do. So the idea of the majority of the sport of golf being played in the summer gets people's attention. So looking at the schedule, optimize that part of the calendar is certainly something we talk about. And then regarding something that Harris English had suggested, that the PGA Tour season might actually start after the Super Bowl, which happens in early February. Brian Rolapp said, yeah, I could see that. Thoughts on this, Ben?
Well, I don't like it. Obviously, as someone who come at it predominantly from a sort of selfish perspective, I love golf. And I'd like there to be a PGA Tour event almost every week of the year. I mean, I understand, I can see that breaks in the calendar would be in some way beneficial. Sometimes I do think it is a bit silly and a bit much, and I'm dead against, for instance, signature events the week after majors. I think that's a terrible idea. But not having the PGA Tour from, presumably, if they're still going to have, finishing, let's say they just pushed it back a bit and finish in mid-September, to then not come back until mid-February. That's an awfully long gap, and it leaves you wondering what the golfers would do. Some of them would love it. Some of them would take more time off. I suppose there's potential for the DP World Tour to benefit, as it is doing at the moment, I would say, from a weakened fall schedule. But I guess as well, I have a bit of an issue with, I understand that NFL casts a big shadow over American sport. It's hard for us in Britain, even those who love NFL, to get their heads around how big it is. And for me in particular, and others like me, who think it's awful. Like, I can't watch it. I find it so dull, and stop-start. And that'll be because I don't understand it and all that. I get it. But I just don't like it, and I never will be an NFL fan. So it's particularly hard for people like me to understand it. But I generally just don't like the idea that you bow to another sport and you give way. And I accept there's a business side here, but we've had we've had the Farmers for how long? We've had the Waste Management Phoenix Open on Super Bowl weekend. We've had Riviera and so on and so forth. The Sony Open. Sony have been sponsors of the PGA Tour for however long now. So to date, sponsors have been willing to support events that run during NFL season. I would ask what's changed. Why aren't they anymore? Is that actually the case? And I don't really see that you have to compete with it. They do things like finishing on a Saturday at the Farmers. Do more of that, but getting rid altogether, no, I don't like it.
I think it's worth mentioning here, Ben. And look, I haven't got a great amount of knowledge of American football. I have been to a tailgate of a college football game, but when you say NFL, actually, the interesting thing to note here is actually college football is probably bigger than NFL over in the US. So the crowds they draw and the viewership is nuts. I mean, we can't get our heads around it. I mean, imagine going to see Oxford University versus Cambridge University and having 200,000 people going to watch it, and then however many people watching it on TV. I mean, it blows your mind. But
so now we're bowing to amateur sport, not even professional sport. It gets worse.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's just such a different, honestly, such a different dynamic. And yeah, I don't know. I to be fair, I'm not sure that Brian Rolapp is suggesting that there won't be anything post September, until February. I mean, he said I can see, the season not starting until after the Super Bowl, but he's just sort of said have the majority of the sport, the sport of golf being played in the summer months. So I think that there probably would still be stuff in, around this time. Well, maybe not this time of year, but certainly September, October. But I don't know. I mean, he's obviously saying nothing's finalized yet, but I mean, from a personal perspective, I agree. It would be a shame for, I really like the Sony Open, apart from the awkward time zone it's on. It's a really good event, and it'll be a shame to see that go, or the Hawaiian swing to go entirely, which presumably would happen. And yeah, events like the Farmers have been around for a long time. So yeah, I mean, it's worth saying, obviously, this isn't going to happen next year. It would probably start the following year, 2027, if it does change. But to go on some of his other comments, Ben, he did also talk about reunification. And he said, everybody wants to see the best golfers compete, but I will say there's a complete misconception about the sport of golf that any given tournament matters if the same 3 or 4 people are in it. There's no data to support that. And that's an interesting thing, because he's kind of saying, I'm not really that fussed about reunification. It's not something that's going to move the needle or move the dial for the PGA Tour. So yeah,
I'd agree with him on that. I think he's right. I think we talked about it before. Like, golf is just too volatile as well. I understand about ticket sales are different, but that's such a small part of it. The Australian Open this week, right? You can guaranteed sell out. Rory McIlroy's there. But in terms of the overall health of professional golf, that's a tiny, tiny, tiny piece of the jigsaw. And what's more important is long-term partners, broadcast partners, a sustainable schedule with sponsors and so on and so forth, and prize money growing and all those sorts of things, pathways and so on. And I agree with that sense that, what they're trying to do with signature events, in effect, is guarantee that the best players are involved. And in a way, you guarantee something in signature events. You're pretty much going to get elite players involved. But really, what the difference between a Ben Griffin and a Harris English and a Brian Harmon and a Andrew Novak and all these players who are like 20th to 50th in the world, they're interchangeable. So what we're really talking about is Bryson, Rory, Scheffler, and maybe 1 or 2 more. And I think too much time has been spent worrying about those guys than it probably should have been. I would still prefer it if, I do think the PGA Tour misses Bryson DeChambeau, but I don't see it as an event by event thing. I see it as a part of their season. Like you want him as part of your storylines that evolve over a season, but on an event by event basis. It's why I wouldn't be fond of a situation where live players come back and play 3 or 4 signature events. I think that doesn't really solve anything. So I like what you're saying here. Yeah, and I think in general, I don't know about what you think, but my sense of Brian Rolapp so far, obviously he's got the NFL background and he might do some things I don't like, but I think I'm pretty impressed by the way he's spoken. He seems very level-headed and very, very sure of what he wants to do, I think.
Yeah, he's not afraid to kind of almost start from scratch, which is a good thing, right? There's no, you don't have to just bow to what's happened previously. So I think that's a good thing. And the fact that he's come from a different sport is also probably a good thing, because he's going to bring, hopefully stuff that he's seen that's been successful for the NFL. The risk is that, for golf nerds like us, that it's going to take away parts of the schedule, some of the events that we've been watching for, decades now. But yeah, you do get the sense that he is kind of thoughtful and he speaks very well. He kind of knows what he wants to do. And he's not going to listen to people who, for the sake of their titles or the fact that they've worked for the PGA Tour for 50 years or whatever. He's going to bring something new. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, this is all kind of rumor mill at the moment. There's a committee who's going to look after things like the schedule. There's different committees for all different parts of the PGA Tour. So there's a lot to be decided. The other thing the last point that he made that I've written down here is, which I think is encouraging. He said the middle class matters. He says you cannot build a lifelong sport that outlives your stars if you don't build a system that works beyond your stars. And I think that's an important point, because he's saying there's no, a bit like going back to what you were saying, it's not, you can't just bring in people like Rory and Bryson and Scheffler and hope that they're going to move the needle on certain given weeks. You have to build a kind of long-term sustainable product based on the entire membership, really. And yeah, I think it bodes well.
It does. Do you think he was reading that? That's always too good.
It does sound like it. Yeah, possibly. Everyone's got their notes, haven't they, when they do these speeches?
Of course they have. Well done.
Right, I'm going to take us on to the world of golf this week, Ben. Quite a busy week, certainly a very busy week on the DP World Tour, because there are 2 events. The first one I'll mention is the Australian Open, which is at Royal Melbourne, widely known to be one of the best golf courses in the world. A couple of things of note here. The winner gets a spot in the Masters next year. The leading 3 players get a spot in the Open next year. So there's a lot to play for outside of, obviously, a historic golf tournament.
Yes, and it's the leading 3 not otherwise exempt for the Open, and it doesn't seem to be a cut-off, so you can finish 20th potentially. Very unlikely. There aren't that many players in this field who are in the Open already. So it might not even be mathematically possible, but you get the point. Leading 3 not otherwise exempt. Winner into the Masters. Plenty to play for, but obviously for the star attraction, Rory McIlroy, the thing, and I've written this in my preview, so I'm afraid people might have to hear or read it twice, but go back to February. He was talking about the cathedrals of golf when he won at Pebble Beach, and he listed Pebble Beach, Augusta, St Andrews, and obviously he's ticked off 2 of those 3 this year. But he did say in those comments, and there are others, and I think Royal Melbourne's one of them. So although he is already a winner of the Stonehaven Cup, he's won this tournament before, I think there'll be a real sense of purpose to what he does this week. Whether he wins or not, I think he'll mean business, because I think winning at Royal Melbourne is something that he'll really want to achieve. And the other thing on that is he's signed up to play this next year, but it's at Kingston Heath. I don't believe they've settled on sites beyond that, but the last pro event held at Royal Melbourne for individuals was 2013. So it's been a 12-year wait. So if it's another 12 years, you get towards his 50th birthday. So, this may be his one and only shot to be a winner at Royal Melbourne. So whether he does or he doesn't, that's a great storyline. It's great for the tournament. And look, I know money will be changing hands. I'm not completely naive, but he doesn't need to be there. It's December. And I really, really believe that he cares about golf courses and history. And he's talked about it. He talked about it in India. Like, now he's completed the career Grand Slam. It's about sort of other things that he can add to his legacy. And I think winning here and winning at St Andrews would be two of the things left. And Portrush if he can, obviously. But it's going to be great to see how he does.
And thoughts on the course, Ben, and who it might suit, because you mentioned 2013 when it last hosted a professional men's event, and Adam Scott was the winner. At that point, he was one of the best players in the world. I mean, he's still not far away, but he was very good at that point. Matt Kuchar was runner-up. He come off the back of a very good season on the PGA Tour. Vijay Singh wasn't far behind. This seems like kind of classy players, good ball strikers. But yeah, thoughts on who it might suit?
Well, you're absolutely right. Then you look at the World Cup. So they held the Talisker Masters and the World Cup back to back at Royal Melbourne, and Jason Day won the latter, and then Thomas Bjorn was in the mix. But you don't have to go far, and I know the World Cup field is very weak if we judge it by the harshest standards. But you got like a lot of veteran guys like Stuart Manley, like finished 8th or something, and there are a lot of guys in both those tournaments, I think, who are sort of more veteran plodder type golfers. I think both Peter Fowler and Peter Senior were in their 50s and finished in the top 20 behind Scott in the Talisker Masters, and that all really relates back to the golf course. And by today's standards, it's pretty short, a composite of west and east. It is pretty short, just over 7,000 yards. There are a couple of really short par 4s, only 2 par 5s. I think there's par 71, but there are 3 par 3s, 2 par 5s, so a lot of par 4s. But the test is on and around the greens. It's notorious. And they're Dr. Alison Mackenzie greens, right? So the parallels with Augusta, I mean, you think Adam Scott won at both courses in the same year. I think around the greens that's true, and actually there aren't many tournaments in world professional golf now where you really have to consider the short game. I said this last week, and in the end you probably didn't, but I think here you definitely do. And actually, if you think about Adam Scott, I think he's got a really underrated short game. He's really good around the greens, really confident, and it obviously applies to Kuchar and Bjorn and Day. And actually it applies to Rory, doesn't it? He's way better around the greens than perhaps people give him credit for. But I if Rory wins this week, I don't think it'll be because he's just blasted his way and sort of outdriven everybody and done it in that style. He'll have to show the full repertoire, but we know he's got it.
Yeah, absolutely. A few other notes to mention about this, which may give a few pointers. So the Asia Pacific Amateur was the last event kind of note, I suppose, to be played here, which is 2023. Jasper Stubbs, who's in the field this week, won that event, and he won in a playoff versus Wenyi Ding, who was obviously runner-up last week. So I think he's going to be well back this week. I really like him, that combination of kind of current and course form. Samson Zhang was also in that playoff. He's not in the field this week, but a few other interesting ones. Matt McCarthy is in the field. I mentioned him last week. I think I got mixed up, so he wasn't in the field last week, but he is this week. An interesting one. I don't really know where that's come from, but I will note that obviously last year it was at a different course, but Riggs Johnson won. And yeah, I don't know. I like traveling Americans. I kind of think that I'm intrigued to see, I'm always intrigued to see how they stack up in this type of field. But I think there's good reason to think that he might go well. Possibly better than Charlie Hoffman, who is in on Category 12.
He likes Augusta, Sam. He likes Augusta.
This is true. But I think it's worth noting Category 12 is back. There wasn't anyone in on Category 12 last week, but it's changed slightly. It's now players who finished the FedEx Cup between 101 and 200, so it's sort of extended in a way. But yeah, this is the first time we're seeing it. He's the only one in this reel, because I suppose it's a long way to travel for a lot of players. But yeah, I didn't expect to see his name. I've got to be honest.
Yeah, it's a bit disappointing, is it not? And again, I don't want to be judgmental. I don't know what I would do if I were in their situation. But you got a lot of really good golfers from America who have lost their full status on the PGA Tour potentially, and have a free ticket to go and play the Australian Open at a great golf course, and they're not doing it. Like, it's not just they're not doing it. Apart from Charlie, none of them want to do it. I can't quite understand that. I hope we have that right. I hope it's not just one spot for Category 12 and he's the one who's taking it. I assume it's still the 5.
Yeah.
But it just seems a real pity. It's nothing new. There are loads. It's a long way. The prohibitive tax, blah blah blah. But it might be the one chance you get to play a tournament at Royal Melbourne. You're professional golfers. You've been grinding your whole life to earn this chance, and you don't want to do it. To those of us on the outside, it just seems mad. They've got nowhere to play for another month. I know they've got families and they got, I understand, but I don't know. It's not for 1 week. It doesn't seem a great excuse to me for so many players to turn it down. So that's a shame. But
Yeah.
it's a great week for the DP World Tour regulars who can play a historic tournament at a great golf course, almost whatever their category is. Like, it goes a long way down, doesn't it? So it's a great week for the rank and file on the DP World Tour, and it's a great week for the Aussies who get in the field as well. It'll be a great week for the crowd. It's a fabulous tournament. It's just a shame that there's not one or two more, American.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the other, you mentioned how far it goes down, goes all the way down to Category 20. Now, there's only one player who's made it in on Category 20 as things stand, which is Robin Williams. And this is where, we talked about this in the past, this is where it really is important where you finish. If you lose your card, quote unquote, it's really important where exactly you finish, because Robin Williams was the first man out of Category 19, was into Category 20. And he's in the field this week. Callum Tarrant is the last man out at the moment. Now, he may sneak into the field. I'm sure he will hope to, because he's already in Australia, having played last week. But could be a huge week for players like him, players like both of them. The other player that I did want to mention, I think warrants a mention, is Matthias Sanchez, because he's a member at Royal Melbourne, and he just won 3 starts ago on the Australian tour. So could be an outsider to monitor.
Yeah, definitely. And I think he's probably, we have to base this on anecdotal stuff and things we read rather than stats, but I think he is probably a player whose short game is his sort of bread and butter. On that, just briefly, like, it really rammed home how hard it is for players who don't hit it miles to watch Kazuma Kobori last week.
Yeah.
They put the ball speed stuff up when he was playing with Puig or someone. Was it Puig or was it Min Woo maybe? In round 3, and he's got like a 50-mile-per-hour ball speed deficit. He was hitting metal. He hit a metal into the 10th hole when Min Woo hit 8-iron.
Yeah,
I'm very positive on him in general. Like, he's got such a beautiful putting stroke, and he's so good around the greens and stuff. But geez, there's a ceiling if you can't hit it where Marco Penja, Min Woo Lee can hit it. There really is.
Well, there's only going to be certain courses that you can realistically compete on. That's the reality, isn't it? Get him to Karen Country Club.
Yeah.
Well, I think,
to his credit, he did that this year, didn't he? Like,
he did.
And you're going to get that with players like him. It's worth bearing in mind if you're betting on golf. Like, with players like that, you are going to get periods where they just can't compete, or tournaments where it looks like they played really badly and they're playing a big course in the Middle East or whatever it may be. And then they're going to, I know he didn't work out for him last week and it probably was a bit soft for him, but he could compete there. So you're going to get upside in prices if you back players like that, but you got to be right on it when it comes to identifying the right golf course.
Yeah. Right. Let's talk about the Nedbank Golf Challenge, the other event on the DP World Tour this week. A couple of notes here. Will Zalatoris is in the field, returning from injury, quite a long-term layoff. Nick Taylor, I was quite surprised to see in the field. Obviously, has decided that he fancies trying life in South Africa.
Are Nedbank operating in Canada, Sam? That's my question to you. Because last year we had Mackenzie Hughes and Corey Connors. So next year, surely it's going to be Taylor Pendrith. That's the 3 big Canadians at the moment have played it in the last 2 years.
Them off.
So, yeah.
There must be something there. I wonder your thoughts on this, Ben. I mean, it's not often that we see, very rare in fact, that we see 2 DP World Tour events at the same week. I mean, is this a problem in your mind? Should they clash? Should something have been done so that they're not sort of sharing, Nedbank isn't sort of having to share the limelight with the Australian Open, or vice versa, I should say?
I think you can see both sides of this one. On the one hand, like the priority for me would be playing opportunities for DP World Tour members. Now, you can argue that if they're going down to Category 20 in Australia, then they've gone further than they need to. So maybe if you hadn't held the Nedbank, it still would have been possible, given that so many of those players wouldn't have travelled to Australia. you probably would have still been getting everyone from Q School and the Hotel Planator into the Australian Open field. But you couldn't be certain about that. And that for me is the priority. So I don't blame the DP World Tour for having corresponding events to give opportunities to players who need them. It is a shame when you've got, for instance, like the prize fund is more here. So Marco Penge, who played the Aussie PGA last week, is going to the Nedbank Challenge now. And there are a couple more who've done that. And that's a bit of a shame. And they kept slipping up in commentary last week saying, of course, Marco's here as well for the Aussie Open next week. And then eventually someone went,
no, he's not.
No, he's not. He's got a late invite to the... And one of the commentators went, but it's okay because we've got Siwoo Kim instead. And it was just... they genuinely positioned it as if Marco had accepted the invite to the Nedbank and Siwoo Kim had been called, Siwoo, can you make it? It's not what happens. But anyway, I think it is a shame. It's not affected the Nedbank because Rory's not playing there anyway. The Nedbank has got Victor Hovland. The Nedbank field is as good as you could have expected, but maybe it affects the Australian Open. But I would say this year in particular, they've got Rory. I don't think it matters who else plays. If you got Rory, it doesn't matter. And they've got him next year as well, so it's not that big a deal for me.
And thoughts on the Nedbank and and the course there at Sun City. I mean, we talked to Jordan Smith about it. It's a second plug for our interview, Jordan Smith, by the way. But he mentioned how hard it is with the wind and the fact that you can, in an instant, you can go from picking an 8-iron out of your bag to a 5-iron. So it seems like there's a real challenge there. But thoughts generally on the course and the test and who it might suit.
Despite Gary Player having designed it, I absolutely love it. And this is one of my favourite tournaments of the year, legitimately. Like, there aren't... I said to you before, I love it when you can get up on a Thursday morning and the golf is starting rather than like last week when you're checking the clubhouse scores. But also that, I do like that sort of factor of being able to recognise the golf course, know every hole. And the TV coverage from back, obviously a bit different now, but... when it was a 12 or 18-man field, you basically saw all of it. You turned on your TV at 7 in the morning and you watched every single shot. Well, not every shot, but every player or whatever. So I've always loved the Nedbank, and I still love it now that it's expanded to 66 players, I think. And I know that caused some consternation. But yeah, great tournament. In terms of what it takes, I always, no one's played this course better for my money than Lee Westwood. I remember Billy Foster getting on his knees and sort of bowing to him when he shot 62 or 63 around here and one of his 3 wins. Tommy's won it twice. Sergio won it twice or 3 times. Nick Price. Like, really great ball strikers, but particularly strong drivers, I've always felt. I mean, it's a very long course, 7,800 yards, and I know we'll talk about altitude and the heat and the ball flying far, but I think you still really want to be a long hitter. And last year, the last thing I'll say, I don't want to say too much on it. Last year, obviously, it was the first time we'd had this sort of new style of field. Well, not the first time, but it's probably the weakest one we've had so far. It's the first time it's been won by like a non-elite player, really, in Johannes Veerman. But actually, he was only 33-40 to 1. But actually, like, if you look at his game, he's above average in length. He hits the ball high and far. He's a really strong, above average driver, and his iron play is a strength. And for me, that's a really simple formula that would take you all the way here. I don't think it's very complicated. Yeah,
and the other thing I noticed about Veerman is that he came in pretty solid form. I noticed actually, I think all the top 5 on the leaderboard, with the exception of Potgieter, who had played elsewhere, but the rest of the top 5 on the leaderboard had played both of the DP World Tour playoff events and played pretty well in them. Not like hadn't won them, but there'd been some solid play there. So I think if you're finding someone, and it's it's about playing recently, isn't it, and competing on another tough golf course recently. So I think you want to look for someone who's played those 2 playoff events, played pretty well, and like you say, is a good ball striker, particularly driver. And I think that's probably going to be the recipe here.
Yeah, I think it sort of makes sense. If you're lacking in confidence, there are some courses you can turn up and feel like it takes the pressure off somehow. Maybe they're particularly wide off the tee or the rough's down or whatever it may be. Places you can go to find confidence. I don't think you find confidence here. You've got to be right on top of your numbers. And obviously altitude's a big factor, but the swirling wind, I think Jordan said, it sort of bounces around the mountains and stuff. So, yeah, I would be amazed, Sam, if we get a genuinely surprising winner here. I think... like the Aussie PGA last week, there were probably like a dozen realistic winners. I think there's probably similar.
Okay, yeah. Right, other events this week quickly. So the PGA Tour is the Hero World Challenge. Not the strongest field this has ever had. Not an event, I have to be honest, that holds a great amount of appeal for me. Very limited field event, no cut. It hasn't got any, the really big names in it. But yeah,
Bar one.
bar one being
Scottie Scheffler.
Oh, Scheffler, sorry, yes. Is Tommy's not playing this week then?
No, Cameron Young is the second favourite. If it was a horse race, you'd call it a bad each way race because it's like 7-4 Scheffler, 12-1 Bar. So there's some place value potentially, but Scheffler's won it the last. Scheffler's form figures here are 2-2-1-1.
Right. Okay.
One bookmaker opened 6-5.
Wow.
And you can sort of understand it, right?
Yeah, totally. The Japanese Golf Tour is the Golf Nippon Series JT Cup. And the MENA Tour definitely deserves a mention this week, Ben. So the Portuguese swing continues. It's the Royal Algarve Classic. And I note that a couple of names are in the field. So Alejandro Canizares. And I'm going to hand over to you for the pronunciation on this next one, Ben.
Mathieu de Courtigny Lafont.
Yes, they are excellent. So they're both in the field.
To his mates.
Right, yes. They're both in the field, which is interesting because Canizares is obviously a long-term DP World Tour player, and the latter has been playing on the Hotel Planet Tour. But I did quite enjoy the category they're in on, Ben. I'm going to read this one out. So they're in category 9B of the MENA Tour, and that's defined as, I'll read this out, players who cannot play the Q School and do not have a category 1 to 9, but want to join the tour, pay their membership fee, and play on invites.
So any other human being in the world, in effect. That is my favourite ever category. Category 12 was my favourite for a while, then I fell out with it. Category 9B. When you say cannot play Q School, does that mean I had a dental appointment? Like, what was the reason?
I presume I don't know. It did make me chuckle, but I do, I like the MENA Tour. I like the fact that it's back.
We're both fans of it. We always have been. Yes. Canizares is going to win that, surely.
Maybe, but yeah, Chris Wood is in the field again. There's some other handy players.
Not many T-pegs. Well. Not a good place to go if you're trying to flog your new T-peg.
This is true. Right, got a couple of slice announcements before we move on to highest bidder. So our fantasy league is up and running again. The code for our league is going to be in the show notes, but there are some changes in format this year, and Ben's just going to do a very quick recap on these changes.
Really, really quick. You select 6 players, but 4 of them are your team and 2 of them are on the bench. You get points for score on every hole, so you get a point when they make a par, right? So it's more like a fantasy golf scoring system, and actually you get only a nominal amount of points in relative terms for their finishing position. You've got anyone who plays fantasy Premier League, you've got like bench boost, triple captain, you pick a captain every week, all that. But the key dynamic here is you've got a subs bench, you can use them. So if your players miss the cut, I had Cam Smith last week, missed the cut, and in the 20-minute window between rounds, I did manage to sub in one of my others, Elvis Smiley, from my bench. So then when it came to Sunday, I got finishing position points for all 4 of mine. But if you've got any guys who miss the cut, you're going to miss out on those points if you don't sub them between rounds 2 and 3. So you got to be sharp. And obviously we deal with a lot of time zones on the DP World Tour. But it's different. It's very different. But you got to use your bench.
I'm genuinely intrigued to know how many people managed to sub in players between rounds 2 and 3 last week, Ben, because that's such tiny window.
Not many.
Probably just you.
I've made a good start. Look, with my ability to wake up at all hours according to the golf schedule, I might win. This year.
Where are you in the Slice Listener League, Ben?
I've got to be top. I'm going to find out while you talk about some other stuff.
Okay. Well, I'll just say that I didn't need to use my subs because all of mine made the cut, Ben. I'm just going to say humble brag.
I'm 46, Sam, so not great.
Yeah, that's better than me. The other announcements to make. So, firstly, we are going to have our first ever Slice Golf Day, and it's going to be in April next year. So, also in the show notes, we're going to have a link to a survey, and that survey will include things like whereabouts it's going to happen, when, whether you're interested or not, how much you're prepared to pay, that type of thing. But if you are interested at all in coming on our first ever golf day, we'd love you to come. If you are a regular listener, then please fill out that survey, and we'll get something organised soon because we want to try and get ahead of the game with that. And the last thing to mention is we're going to have a Q&A episode in a couple of weeks' time, just before the Christmas break. So if you have any questions that you'd like us to tackle in said episode, then please send them over to our email address, which is slicedgolfpodcast@gmail.com. And that leads us on to...
It's the highest bidder. It's the highest bidder. It's the highest bidder. It's the highest bidder.
Right, highest bidder. Ben, in fact, I'm going first on this one, and you're going to have a chance to outbid me. Right. European male golfers to have won a single major. We haven't already done this, have we?
Nope.
Okay, European male golfers to have won a single major, and this is from Scott Forrest. He says, I believe, he hasn't given us a list, but he says, I believe there's 11 since 1970.
Not many, is it?
Not many at all. No. How many? In fact, how many am I saying? 11, let's have a think. Single major. 4?
I'm sorry, I've got to do 5.
I would expect no different, Ben. Go on then.
Right. Francesco Molinari.
Definitely.
Danny Willett.
Definitely.
Paul Lawrie.
Definitely.
And now I'm into the realms that you said 4, didn't you?
Yeah.
So I'm on 5. So I've got 3. I thought it was going to be
Making this
way
look pretty
easier.
easy so far. Yeah.
Oh, Henrik Stenson.
Yes.
See, when I initially bid, I was like, oh, well, Keimer, but that's wrong. So now I'm scraping the barrel a little bit here.
I got one lined up, but I don't think I'm gonna...
yeah, obviously, Graham McDowell.
Yeah, that was my one. Damn. Okay, well done, Ben. Yeah, to be fair, I needed to be bolder with my, I should have learned by now. I need to be bolder against a player of your skills. But yes, another 5 points. So yeah, strong start, just as it was last season. Who else is on? I'm trying to think who else is on the list. We'll get this confirmed and put it in our newsletter as ever. I'm trying to think of others off the top of my head. I mean, those are certainly the ones that I had. Oh, Justin Rose.
Do you know, I thought Justin Rose, and I thought no, he's won 2, but of course, Crawley, he has not. So yeah,
it's just the one, yeah. But yeah, we'll find out. We'll find out who else is on the list and put that in the newsletter. But thank you, Scott Forrest, for the category. And also, it's worth mentioning, if you have any highest bidder categories, we're running a little bit low. I think we may have 1 left in the tank. So please send them over. If you can also send over answers, that would be great. Just so a couple of people have mentioned, it would be great if you could say the answers on the episode, which we'd obviously like to, if they are available. So yeah, I think that's all there is to say for this week. As we mentioned earlier on, if you haven't already listened to our special episode with Jordan Smith last week, it's definitely worth a listen. There's some really interesting stuff in there about his plans for the PGA Tour next year, things like his improvements in putting, working with a psychologist. Yeah, it's some really interesting stuff. So please have a listen. But thank you for listening this week, and we'll be back next Monday for another episode of Sliced.